And so he says, before we see why scientism is false, he wants to step back and look at where it came from, right? And give us kind of an analysis of it. Now, he tells us a full analysis of the question where it came from would be, impossible in his book. This is a pretty short book. But he says we can at least look at one key venue for where these shifts took place, and that is in the American University. And so the next chapter, chapter 3, he's going to take a look at how scientism changed the universities. So we can just go ahead on and move into that chapter.
Right. So chapter 3 talks about how scientism changed the universities. And here he's again going to provide this history of change that occurred. Because again, remember who founded those universities? Who were the elites of the classical education, post normal education? It was the Christians. It was the Christians providing the universities, and then we mistakenly opened it up to everybody. And now we have government Pell Grants that even help those who can't afford it, because the government has also subsidized the increase in the tuitions as well. So we have it coming in both ends there. All right. Well, the ubiquity and the cultural authority of scientism can be discouragingly and coercive to faithful Christians who are seeking to follow Christ, as it immerses them in a pervasive secularism. So if you're just keep getting inundated with it, if you have kind of no answers for it, if you don't know where to seek out the answers, it seems like you're facing the behemoth, especially when you go to university and, all these doctored people are around you, all these people wanting to be doctors who, have shirken off the immortal coil of religion and are just there to give you the facts and nothing but the facts. Well, Dallas Willard, who taught philosophy at the University of Southern California from 1965 to 2013, he says about the American Academy, he wrote this: "The crushing weight of the secular outlook permeates or pressures every thought that we have today." Every thought. It's almost like they're taking every thought captive. I wonder if we could do that as well. Yeah. The powerful, though vague and unsubstantiated presumption is that something has been found out that renders a spiritual understanding of reality in the manner that Jesus is simply foolish to those who are in the know. And so once you learn the thing, then you realize, oh, what my poor parents raised me in, it's not only true, but it's now backwards. And, the joke for the intro to philosophy students is, you take one semester of philosophy and you automatically think you're a philosopher. The joke follows the intro to psychology and everything else too. Is you're suddenly a doctor who's diagnosing every personality on TV as a schizophrenic. And I mean, that might be true today, but that's at least was the joke at the time.
So he says things have not always been this way in the American universities, right? Where we have been kind of pressed into this particular area. He says in 1884, Harvard University changed its official seal to include two phrases: veritas, truth, and Christo es elexica, for Christ and the church. So truth for Christ and the church is the idea here.
Yeah.
Julia Rubin, he tells us, who serves today as a professor of the university at Harvard there, explains the significance of this particular seal, this Veritas Christo ex Alexica. He says that in 1884, Harvard's officials noticed that the two phrases on their new seal, truth and Christ and the church, were compatible things. They had inherited a worldview that strangely and strongly associated truth and religion. The term truth encompassed all correct knowledge. So what is all correct knowledge that they thought they had? What was true, right? Well, it included things like knowledge of religious doctrines, common sense beliefs, and scientific theories. And all these were judged by the same cognitive standards. So the truth then for them in 1884 included religious doctrines and common sense beliefs. He says this view represented the view of most of the educated Americans at this time.
Right. A time long ago.
Well, okay, 40 years ago.
Yeah. And we've been doing swimmingly ever since. There's been no downgrade in culture or theory of knowledge. We've only gotten better. Well, how things have changed. Well, Rubin details how from 1880 to 1930, the American Liberal Arts College became the modern research university. She distinguishes between three overlapping time periods: The religious stage from 1880 to 1910. That's probably about true. The scientific stage from 1900 to 1920, and the humanities and extracurricular stages 1915 to 1930. And again, remember when we talk about history, there's usually not a thing that starts the thing, right, that we're talking about, and so that's why these kind of overlaps happen, and it's more of a smooth age or a smooth period, rocky version, and then smooths out again and gets rocky again. So, and again, once we think that we're in the middle of true knowledge, we just have to look back at all the periods before us and go, they thought that too. So there's no reason to sit where we're at.
So she's going to start with this religious stage. And she says that during the religious stage, colleges consider themselves to have two mandates. First, imparting wisdom and knowledge while teaching the skills needed to discern each. So notice colleges believe that part of their requirement, right, was to impart wisdom and knowledge. And, and then skills. So it teaches you wisdom and knowledge, and then it teaches you how to do things so that you can make a living, right?
Right.
And then secondly, the second kind of mandate for college is developing students, notice, spiritually, morally, and politically, so that they might serve God, the state, and the church as well. Well, we're a long ways from that.
Right. So I've been reading more about classical education, and I find myself once again cursing dead people like Rousseau, and realizing how just one individual can uproot the whole system. But this idea of not everybody needing college, but this specificity in a skill to do a particular job is what universities were kind of there for. They were there to kind of continue the education into a further degree of specific knowledge of kind of a less general sense. But the primary schools were there to develop that individual that knew how to take wherever they landed in whatever career and take up and go. And universities, we kind of have it backwards. Everyone must go to university, and once you get there, again, it's probably a little bit of a treaded on old ground. But the way that you have to kind of realize if you want to succeed at college is you almost have to teach yourself. Well, those were all skills that you were supposed to get in your primary schools that are no longer there. Your art was supposed to have been formed then, and then you get into the universities and you're like, wow, I have to teach myself how to learn things because they're not doing it for me anymore. And so it's pretty impressive how much has changed there, where the religious stage used to just be that imparting of knowledge, again, increasing, but then developing spiritual maturity even more so. Again, the universities were the places where, your pastors and your theologians went to school.
Yeah.